Chris Charla, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you. You guys are at issue 300. I'm so excited.
Oh my God, you've been paying attention to our magazine. Yeah, it's wild, man. Well, like you used to be involved with the magazine back in the day. How did that go?
Yeah, absolutely. And Game Informer was one that we always thought the Game Informer guys were super cool, and they were a competitor, but it was awesome. And so I just saw the last issue, and I was like, oh, $2.99, and then I was like, issue 300's coming. Like something special's gonna happen. So I don't know what's happening, but I assume that I'm gonna get something special and awesome. Although I also got the sticker on it that said, this is your last issue, so I gotta get over to get the GameStop and resubscribe.
Oh man, we timed it poorly for it. Yeah, so that was Next Generation Magazine. Like, what era were you there? What time frame?
So I was at Next Gen from I think I got there around issue 8 to just about the end to about I left I think in 2000 to go do some other magazines like Dreamcast magazine and a couple other like launch magazines and so actually I left for a little while to start IGN, and then I went back, and then I left again, and then I went into development.
I like just the subtle name drop of then I guess I founded IGN, and then I moved on to some other things in my life. I don't know. All right, so the magazine stuff. Let's start with there. So through that era, then going up until 2000, do you remember your most memorable interview? What was the most stressful day, coolest dev moment? Let's get some good stories from back in that era.
It was amazing because you got to understand. I was somebody who just spent my whole childhood making fanzines and little magazines. Even when I was 6 and stuff, I always loved magazines. I always loved video games, and then after college, I got a job at this Macintosh magazine, and so actually subscribed to Next Gen, which people probably don't know, but it was the U.S. version of Edge, and it was a really cool magazine, and it was a magazine that took video games seriously, and treated video games as adult entertainment, not adult entertainment, but like a serious legitimate form of media and entertainment, at a time when the kind of prevailing wisdom was video games for kids and that kind of thing. And I actually subscribed to the magazine at a CES or something, came home one day, and there was this Jaguar issue for the Atari Jaguar, just waiting on the floor of my flat, and it just said Pussycat with the Jaguar scorches on it or scratches on it. And I was just this magazine is amazing. I have to work here. And
finally dignity.
Just by being extremely lucky, I ended up getting a job there. And but the cool thing about it was really seeing how serious everybody was, and getting to write feature articles, and okay, you're gonna write. This isn't a luxury a lot of journalists have now. We're writing a feature article about this, so you're gonna fly someplace and interview somebody, and you're gonna do these other interviews on the phone, and then you're gonna spend a week. This was kind of at the very beginning of the internet, pre-internet, you're gonna spend a week at the library, reading and doing research, and you're gonna put that into an article. It was just so satisfying to do do that kind of journalism, and then just to get to meet everybody. I think in that era between Next Gen and Dreamcast magazine and IGN and everything, I met every single one of my gaming heroes with the exception of John Carmack, but everybody else. I mean, and that was just contingency because somebody else went to go do the Carmack interview.
Sure. Who was number one? Who was number one for you back in the day that you were most excited to meet?
For me personally, it was definitely the Infocom guys.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I did some cool interviews with Brian Moriarty and Steve Moretsky, because I'd been really into those old text adventures back in the day. But then the the most fascinating one, and I was just thinking about it this morning because you just did an AMA on Reddit, was Bill Gates. So we got to fly up and interview Bill Gates, and that was a super cool experience.
What stood out about interacting with Bill Gates?
So, professionally, just from the interview, just how smart he was, how on the ball he was, how much he, really knew what was going on, obviously. And then on a personal level, the thing that we talked about on the whole plane ride home was, we got to this room where the interview was, and it was kind of like this prototypical home at Microsoft. And so it had was set up with a kitchen because you could do voice control and stuff like that. And Bill Gates walks in and he's just hey, how you guys doing? Do you want a Fresca? And my boss and I looked at each other and we're the world's richest man just offered us Fresca. Like, absolutely, we want a Fresca. And so Bill Gates got us Fresca, and it was I don't know, it was kind of a cool moment. So.
And was this about the launch of the Xbox, or is this like Age of
No,
Empires,
this was like back in '98. I think this was just talking about like Windows gaming. I think it was like sort of pre-Windows '98, and just how Windows gaming was, like a big push. But it was pre-Xbox.
Yeah. Is it bizarre to see how much Bill Gates still comes up? I mean, there's still comments just flooding YouTube for so many Microsoft videos where it's like, F you, Bill Gates. It's like his presence is still felt so much,
Yeah, but I think like maybe there's like some memes about that. But like if you look at first of all, the work that he's doing with his foundation is, like literally world changing. I can't imagine, a better thing to do with the world's, biggest fortune that he had than what he's doing now. It's just mind boggling. And then if you look at like what he does on Reddit, he's a cool guy. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, he's like saving the world, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then, he's still, obviously, very interested in technology and everything like that. And he's funny, and he does these funny Reddit videos, and he seems like a cool guy. I mean, that was my, one interaction with him, but I am a huge fan of his.
It's still just bizarre. And I know the internet's commented on this 1,000 times, but it still cracks me up the idea that he's literally saving a gigantic percentage of the world's population. It seems like a cool guy overall, but he's just kind of dorky looking. Steve Jobs, he was an asshole, but he was cool. He had a cool swagger about him, so we should worship him instead.
I don't know. I think Bill Gates is a pretty cool dude. So I will leave it there.
I just said, are you in the same office as him right now? I meant to ask you. If you just rotate the camera around. No, so I mean, do you ever miss the old press days? If you could go back and run a magazine again, what would you do with it?
I really don't. I mean, it was really cool, and so I miss like getting to focus like on a feature article where you really just like dive in deep and learn something. And I miss some of that, but I get a lot of the same satisfaction from getting to like meet developers now.
Yeah.
So I get to go around, like the coolest part of my job is I get to go around and talk to tons of developers and have like, obviously talk to them about their games, but then, of course you go to lunch, you go to dinner, and you get to have these like cool, like deep conversations, that don't get shared, and so you probably like learn a little bit more and hear a little bit more, and so I really like that part of it. Like without question, like getting to interact with developers is like by far the most fun part of my job.
Yeah, is there a part of you though, just from that press background, where you're out to dinner, you have a long conversation with an amazing developer, they're so smart, it's like I wish this was being recorded. I wish I could jot down notes and share this with the world, because it's not like sensational stuff. It's just a way to share how smart these people are.
Absolutely. I actually do think that. I actually was someplace yesterday, and I was having lunch with a developer, and we were talking about they had been a producer at a publisher at the same time I was working at a developer, and we had worked together, not directly, but we knew like tons of the same people, and we were really talking about the way the game industry in a specific place was in kind of like the early 2000s. And it was just a lot of fun. Just like a lot of names came up, and what's this person doing now? What's that person doing now? But also talking about like the way games got made then. It's not, none of the games we worked on were like famous games. None of them are like remembered games. They were just games that came and went. And I think we celebrate obviously the hits and the really important games really, really well in the game industry. And we do a pretty good job like documenting what was going on around those and stuff like that. But I think that, what I thought after the lunch, and even talked about it a little bit at lunch, was that like the one level down, or in this case, maybe like 4 levels down, part of the game industry, the kind of work-a-day, game industry is not, nobody's memorializing that. Not that it should be memorialized as something great, but nobody's just like, memorializing that in a way that, is going to be there for future scholars. So it did spark my mind, when I was driving, dropped the guys off and was driving away after lunch. It's like, I would love to do, not a podcast, but I'd love to recorded that lunch and been able to send it to someplace, under seal and say like, don't open this for 25 years because we named names and we gossiped and we did everything else. But in 25 years, maybe this will actually be interesting to somebody. And so, so I do miss that kind of part of it sometimes.
Game Informer's been around for like 27 years at this point. If you want to record every lunch you have and just slip us those files, we promise to save it for the 600th issue. We'll not seal it until then. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's something to that. Like there's so much like great history work that's starting to be done around games right
Yeah.
now with like the stuff that they're doing at the Strong Museum and the National Video Game Museum and the stuff Frank Cifaldi's doing with the Video Game History Foundation. So we're starting. It's good because we are hitting that point now where the pioneers are getting older and they're not all with us anymore. From that 2600 era and everything like that. And so we're starting to like actually pay attention to our history in a cool way. And so I think it's something that we need to think about more and more. Is just like, as much as we're looking forward, and that's like the place where we should be looking, just as like a fan of games, like I want to make sure we're like, looking backwards too and remembering our history. And it makes me super happy to know that your guys' vault is there, and that like even if it's not that organized, I know Frank's been up there to check it out. Like it's there, and like it's not going anyplace. I've seen the door, and so it just makes me happy to know that stuff exists. Like,
oh, that's nice. How do you feel like Microsoft's doing overall with honoring history and remembering history? I mean, do they have archives of like prototypes of the original Xbox design, stuff like that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Look into it, man.
I focus on at work. Like I focus on, just like other stuff. So I'm not 100% sure actually.
Okay. Well, what are you focusing on? Do you want to give people just a surface level pitch of what your job is day to day?
Yeah, so I run the ID at Xbox program, which is a good sized team at Microsoft, and we, at the core level, we help developers get their games onto Xbox One. Independent developers and Windows 10 with Xbox Live, and just kind of like help make that stuff happen.
And so developers just call you up and say, hey, I'm vaguely interested. Or are you just reading Twitter and sending a lot of DMs saying, hey, are you interested? Or how does the flow work?
Yeah, so it goes every way you can imagine. So tons and tons of people join the program every day and every week to say, like, hey, I've got a game. I want to get it on an Xbox. I'm not part of the program yet. Like, here it is. At the same time, we're also like at trade shows. We're, local shows. We're always out there like looking for cool games, asking people, hey, do you know about ID at Xbox? Have you thought about console? And when we first started, nobody knew. No one, was thinking about it. And now, like a lot of times I'll be at a show and I'll say, oh, this game looks really cool. Have you thought about bringing it to Xbox? I'm like, oh, yeah, we're part of ID. We have dev kits. I'm like, okay, awesome. And then, of course, we look at Twitter, or people like @message us on Twitter and say, you guys need to check this game out. And, so we look everywhere. And things come to Xbox everywhere you can imagine, from somebody who works at Microsoft, like, this game's cool, my buddy's working on a game, to, folks who just, go through the xbox.com/ID portal to, folks who meet at shows and everything like that.
Yeah. Not to single anybody out, but let's single somebody out. Do you feel like Cuphead is the #1 success story so far? An Xbox One, at least?
They're an awesome success story. I don't know if they're the #1. I mean, I think they're really well known, and then they've had like a ridiculous level of success, and after crazy amount of work. But I guess the one thing that feels good to me is that to me they're one of like a bunch of success stories we've had on Xbox One through the ID at Xbox program.
Yeah. So what does that look like when a game hits as hard as, for example, a Cuphead? Like, do people high five you in the hallway? Does it boost numbers? What does it mean for you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, yeah, I mean, sales help, for sure. It feels awesome, like it feels great. Like, and for those guys to have the, obviously with Cuphead, we're pretty intimately, involved in it or familiar with what was going on during the development. I know exactly how hard those guys were working, all the sacrifices they were making. Maya Moldenhauer just did a talk at GDC where she showed herself like literally inking frames for Cuphead while her brand, 2-week-old newborn is like next to her in a bassinet, and she's just inking while the baby's sleeping. Like, that's crazy. And so, that is a level of commitment that is, to me, and I'm not, my wife's had a kid, and so I know what that's like with a newborn. Like that, that's a lot of work. And for them to see the level of success, like multi-million seller for their game, and for their game to be so good, like I can't, it is like maybe the best, like feel good story, I can imagine that they work so hard. And it just helps that they're like the nicest people. And then for them to have that level of success with a game that is like, I mean, I honestly think people will be talking about that game in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. It just feels awesome. So it's been, we try not to like rest on our laurels, or, we actually don't run around the hallways high-fiving, but but it feels really good, and so hopefully we can just keep working on the program and keep making a platform so that other devs can have that kind of level of success.
Yeah. What insight can you share in terms of like your marching orders? Are you pull into a meeting once a month and people say, Chris, bring home those exclusives now, let's do it? Or what are your specific orders for what types of games to find and how to bring them home?
Yeah, it's not really like, I mean, our number one marching order, and it's really been the same since the program started, is just like make it easy to ship on Xbox.
Yeah.
Like if we make it easy for developers to ship on Xbox, like everything else takes care of itself. Like that will ensure that we get this broad variety of games. That and once we have that broad variety of games, there'll be lots of neat games in there that we look at and say like, okay, this is really cool. Like let's talk to these guys. Like let's make sure the world knows about this game. And so it kind of comes from the bottom up. It's not a top down like. I mean, the directive of like, it'd be cool if you just went out and picked hits is great, but that's not the way the world works. You know what I mean? Like, it's more about like trying to provide this like fertile ground for all developers to get started in, and then you see what's looking really cool, and then you go talk to those, folks.
Yeah. So you're actually giving a speech at GDC about the ID at Xbox program. What do you have in mind for that presentation?
So, excuse me, sorry, I've got a cold. So one of the things that we're going to do in that talk is we're probably going to share some numbers that about development on Xbox. And I think it's one of the toughest things for game developers today is to understand, especially game developers who are developing for digital distribution, to understand like what do sales look like, what do marketplaces look like, what game genres are doing well, what has a good long tail, what does a good long tail mean, and so we're going to try and share some numbers, not specific games, but more like generalized from our experience. With helping more than like 700 games come to market through the ID program, that kind of explains like the in some ways the market opportunity on Xbox, which is ridiculous and awesome, and then also just kind of informs some things people should know about the genre. There's a service called Steam Spy that tracks or derives sales on Steam, which I think has been really, really valuable for developers, and we want to try and add some data points from Xbox so that developers can start to have like a good sense of like where things are. And then I think also in the talk I'll be just talking about Microsoft's going to have some pretty fun announcements at GDC this year, and I'll be either teasing them or previewing some of them in my talk as well.
So would this be public information, or would it be part of the ID at Xbox program that you would share sales data?
So the talk at GDC is public,
yeah.
Right? So anything we say will be public. So we won't be saying like, oh, this game sold this many units, but we may, we'll be saying, like games in general are doing like this, and the market size looks like that, and
okay,
that kind of thing.
It's interesting if
we're working out exactly what we're going to say right now.
Yeah, so like you bring up Steam Spy, which is a great resource for us. It's really beneficial to check out numbers. What is the downside of making that public for Xbox's games?
I don't think there's any downside. Obviously, we always respect the developers' confidentiality, and we won't share numbers because that data is actually owned by the developer, not by us.
Interesting.
And so, if it's a case where there's only one or two games in a genre, I can't tell you how the genre is doing because I'm really revealing how a specific game is doing at that point.
Yeah.
But what we can share is general information and trends and that kind of thing. But I think what it does. Hopefully it just helps developers make more informed decisions. I think there's a lot of criteria to evaluate success on as a game developer. Certainly there's, I think creative success maybe is the most important one. Are you satisfied creatively with the game you're making? And then there's, just like the success of, the satisfaction from just finishing a project that you started. But then there's commercial success. And I don't think we should be shy. Certainly us at Microsoft, when we're talking to developers, we shouldn't be shy about like talking about commercial success, because that's another, important metric of success. And so working with developers so they can understand, what a game can do. A game can always break out and a game can always kind of flop. But, understanding like what a game is, like what the marketplace are launching into for that genre, for that art style, for this, for that. I think just informing developers about that is something that we can do. And it's kind of our responsibility as a platform holder. And that helps developers make more informed decisions about what they work on and where they want to innovate and everything like that. So.
Yeah. Is there anything that just coming through the data so far, is there anything that really surprises you? Is there something like a genre that's much more popular than people would think?
No, like I mean, there's always surprises. I think the awesome thing about that we've seen from digital distribution, like as a whole, in the last 10 years, and we're kind of 10 years since, to the way I think of it, the kind of indie revolution started with that first summer of arcade, where
Yeah.
indie games kind of really first burst into mainstream consciousness on console. Um, has been how many places there are where developers can succeed is just ridiculous. And when you have a worldwide audience and you're not constrained by the traditional distribution methods of like physically making a disc and putting it on a boat and then putting it on a truck and then putting it in a store, you can reach an audience that maybe is smaller than others, but really exists in a place where you can have like a sustainable business. But because it's worldwide, it wouldn't be sustainable to try and do that with like physical distribution. But with digital distribution, you can. And so the beauty of that is just that it's enabled so many more game types. Like I don't think, I was an independent developer for 10 years, and in the days when I was an independent developer, it was, you had to pitch to publishers who had capital, who could build discs and fun games and everything like that. It was fine. But I don't think Cuphead would have gotten made. Like I mean, I know Cuphead wouldn't have gotten made. If an advertising executive and a guy who worked in the family construction business, and a financial services person who was really good at art went and pitched a game, and we're like, we're gonna make this like hand animated game. We're gonna animate every frame by hand. It's gonna take years, and we've never made a game before. Can we do it? Like the answer, I mean, it just would have been no.
Right.
It's
right.
not even. And so the fact that, with the democratization of development, with, tools like, Unity and Unreal, with programs like ID at Xbox, and to enable platform access, a team like the Moldenhauers and Studio MDHR can just go for it and just like follow their passions and follow their dreams. And it's not a guarantee of success. Certainly they've been successful, but a lot of games are, not every game is a success. It's not a guarantee of success, but I think like for most people, people understand that, and you don't expect success from everything you do, but like what you really want is you want your shot. You want the ability to like go for it and see what can happen. And in the olden days in video games, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to even 10 years ago, you had teams that like couldn't get a shot, and who knows what games could have been made by, men and women who are now working in the insurance industry or substitute teachers or whatever, because they just didn't get a shot in 1995 or
Right.
2002. And then today we have Cuphead and tons of other like super innovative, cool independent games because those developers have their shot. And to me, that's like, I don't know, it's just super powerful, and it like it charges me up, and it gives me, and I speak for the whole team here. Like I know I'm the face of it, but I know like our whole team feels this way. Like it gives us at Microsoft and at Xbox like a huge sense of responsibility. Like like we're like enabling these folks to take their shot. Like we better do a good job and do a good job for them, because I sure don't want to be the reason like a great game doesn't come into existence. And so,
But on the flip side, not to be negative, but it's got to be so tough to be the gatekeeper as well and try and curate something. Because I know that's like Steam's overall philosophy is like anything goes. You never know what games people want and what they might be searching for. So let's let everything on. And then as a result, the Steam marketplace is just a cluttered mess. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's tricky. So we kind of dealt with some of those same issues. So with ID and on Xbox, games have concept approval, and that is really a bar to make sure that the game hits like a minimum level of sort of what a console gamer expects in terms of quality. It's not a guarantee that the game's good. You can find bad games on any platform. But we have that. But that debate about the open, the power of curation to make sure that everything's going to hit like a minimum bar versus the power of openness to make sure you don't miss anything is a tricky one. And the way we solved it on Xbox was with the Xbox Live Creators Program. And so what Creators Program is a cool program that Microsoft has where like literally anyone can buy an Xbox, turn it into a dev kit, download free versions of Visual Studio, Unity, whatever they want, and ship a game. And ship it with no restrictions, no concept approval. You never have to sign an NDA, anything like that. and you can ship it on Xbox. And I think that's fantastic, because that is finally the true openness of the opening of the platform, full democratization of game development. At the same time, I think you made some comments about marketplaces that get crowded. And so the way we solved it on Xbox after, a huge amount of internal debate and discussion was that we, have this completely open platform. We have the creators program that anyone can ship a game into, but it is on console, it's in a separate place, so that you know what you're getting into. You know that these are games that are not, like traditional console games. And then we also make it so that it's very straightforward. If a developer ships into the creators program, and then later it's like, oh, I want this to be, like to have achievements, to have gamer score, to be in the main store. It's really straightforward for them to come through ID to make that happen.
Gotcha. Does the shift with Game Pass affect you at all? Having exclusives come through that program, does that affect ID at Xbox?
I mean, if you look at Game Pass today, there's a ton of ID, games that come through ID at Xbox that are in Game Pass, and so we think it's like a cool opportunity for developers, and obviously like a really neat thing for fans as well to be able to get access to that many games for like a low monthly price.
Yeah, how does that affect discussions then with developers? Just saying like, hey, if you want to be part of Game Pass, you can. That's a separate channel that we'll put you through.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect like how you ship your game on Xbox. Like obviously, you need to go through certification, you need to get your achievement, you just need to ship like a standard game. It's more like, as you said, it's like a separate discussion. We've had people come to us and say, like, hey, Game Pass sounds really cool. How do I be involved? And we see games that were like, oh, this would be really fun to put in Game Pass. And so so we have like those additional discussions.
Okay, but there's no clear delineation about like what types of indie games will always be included in Game Pass moving forward?
No, I think it's basically game to game.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, Chris, 2018 in general, what are you looking forward to? What are you really excited to get out there, to play, to discuss more?
I'm really excited to play Below.
You promised 2018? You really think it's coming?
I'm not going to promise it, but I'm really excited to play Below. I haven't played Below in several years actually. I had this. I've talked about it before. I had this like maybe one of the best gameplay and worst gameplay experiences I've ever had in my life with Below. And after that, I just resolved I was not playing that game till it was out, and I'm gonna play it in 2018.
It's really funny. I went back because I interviewed you right when you announced ID at Xbox at Gamescom. We were in Germany in 2013, and I went back and watched that interview before this one. And like the main piece of B-roll I was using for gameplay as an example was Below footage, and it's very funny. Like 5 years later, still waiting on Below.
It's gonna be worth it. I assure you.
All right, it's a weird one. Okay, so Below's number one.
Yeah, and then there's so many great games coming out. I think Deep Rock Galactic just shipped today into Xbox Game Preview, which is a super, super fun, like 4-player co-op. So it's a 4-player co-op space mining action game.
That sounds good.
Where it's awesome. You drop ship onto a planet. You have to hit these goals and get out before the drop ship leaves, and it is stressful and hectic, and you get attacked, and it is unbelievable. It's super, super cool.
Awesome. Are you guys already planning for E3? Getting excited for E3 already?
Yeah, actually, I was just at an E3 meeting, so planning starts early, just in terms of logistics and everything like that. But I think there'll be some awesome games at E3 this year.
Okay, so without revealing anything, scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for Xbox's show at E3 this year so far?
11.
11. All right, good answer, man. That's good. Well, hey, anything else you want to get off your chest?
No. It was good chatting, and hope to see lots of people at GDC and E3, and please let us know what you want us to do with Xbox and ID at Xbox and everything else.
There we go. All right. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.